Welcome. This is Watches Tonight. We're back after the Labor Day holiday. I hope you guys missed us because we missed you. Guys, we are streaming live tonight. We are talking about the fatal flaws in watches that we love. We love these watches, but we also admit they're imperfect. We explore some of those imperfections from a collector's standpoint. We also chat live, and I share... Oh, we're good. Okay, sorry. I got a false alarm. Okay, and then we also share your viewer wrist shots tonight on Watches Tonight. There we have Arto Charles from New York City, Enrique Cassiano, Edward Ledden of Sweden, Mark S. from Brooklyn. It was funny, I was getting one of these from off camera. I'm like, okay, I can see their names. I think this is working. All right, guys, so here we go. Ron H., Miroslav, Jim Millett from the UK, Mateo. We got David H. from Texas, where everything is bigger. We got David Rimas from DC, where everything is more political. And we got Moto Gunner from Athens, Georgia, where I was once a resident. We've got Ivan joining from Barcelona. We've got a friend from California, Abraham Stein from Detroit, Michigan, the Motor City, and then Jens staying up late, the home of Zinn and the European financial capital in Frankfurt. Welcome to all of you. Vincent, Sean, Dr. Stu, Aristocratic from Asheville, North Carolina. So guys, here's the thing. Wrist shots number one, but before we go there, I want to ask you to open up my Instagram, check it out, Tim_Mosso. It is an all video short format Instagram account where you see about 95% watches and about 5% the life of Tim Mosso. I plan to post a little bit more, including the very popular Squash the Pug, who helped me break my Instagram like record. They always say picture yourself with dogs if you want to be more sympathetic. So there will be more Squash on my Instagram account. That's Tim_Mosso on Instagram. Okay, viewer wrist shots. Now we've got it. Viewer wrist shots number one. Jeff S. is off for a drive in his Aston Martin DB12 with the Armstrong Equal Force. Seb A, by the way, Aston Martin and Armstrong, excellent. Seb A shares this shot of his MB&F Legacy Machine split escapement with a new white strap for late summer, and it's working. Edward P greets us from Los Angeles. The Overwatch with his AP Royal Oak 50th anniversary 15510 ST, looking good and well captured. It's rare that you get a good shot of both the foreground and the background. That really captures it with a lighting to boot. That's the leading candidate for best pure photo tonight. Jimmy Y combines titanium and vibranium with his rare Rolex Yachtmaster 42 tie. We don't see a lot of those. Josh P. of Ontario, Canada presents a very different kind of iced Rolex with Cosmograph Daytona and dry ice. Guys, send your wrist shots to Monday Mailbag at thewatchbox.com or the1916company.com. They both work to see your pieces on these pixels. Friends joining in, let's see who's here. Thomas Burnett, Slowboy Fuel Pump, saying he follows me on Instagram, and I deeply appreciate that. We've got Neil Benham, we've got Time Hill, we've got Grandmaster Chime, and Alan Hughes joining in from New York City, Rob Filmer from Chicago, and Michael Everywhere from Manhattan, just up I-95. Ian Hiscock, MX from London, thank you for staying up late with us. And McLauder, also from Holland, thank you for staying up late in continental Europe. We've got PKL from Dusseldorf, Germany, another one of our late nighters. Okay, so stay with me. Let's see if we can get 300 concurrent viewers, because that's always a magic number for me, and I appreciate it. So fatal flaws in top watches. No watch is perfect, and we understand this well. But when a watch achieves massive popularity, fame, and value, it can be harder than usual to be objective about its merits and demerits. So we're going to talk about those shortcomings, because all watches discussed tonight have immense appeal and robust followings, but as the devil's advocate, and solely as the devil's advocate, this comes from a place of love, I'm going to address their weaknesses and how that should frame a collector's decision to buy or not buy the watches you see here. So, one more jump to our chat box. We got the Cardinal from Michigan City, Indiana, wearing his Breitling B1, Milgauss 88, asking, is the clock not working? That's right, the Nixie is unplugged right now, but it will be back online next time. Jared Lacourt, a good friend of ours in the box, Moto from Raleigh, North Carolina. Mr. Paradigm, welcome to all of you. And then we have him saying, make me a deal on your IWC Ingenieur, even though its flaw is no micro adjustment. Well, no watch is perfect, as we said. Here are the top flaws in some popular models, starting with the Omega Speedmaster Professional Moonwatch, a big one and a big name. This is a watch that has more than put in its time, both in actual spaceflight and on collectors' wrists. Its legendary status is assured, so it will not feel slighted if perhaps we describe some of its shortcomings in detail. But first, what we love. We love the fact that it is a classic, that it has real history, that it was and is a genuine piece of astronaut kit. This is not riding on its laurels. This is actually something that's up in space right now. It is authentically flown, and you can buy it in the same spec that the astronauts get it. There's not a civilian version and one for the folks who actually shoot into the sky. It's the same watch. It's also good value, as at about $6,600 to start, the price is reasonable. Let's face it, they could probably ask a whole lot more money and get it. Now, let's talk a little bit about the flaws. So, the first thing that I'm going to shout out is 50 meters. 50 meters in 2024 is just not enough. Now, I recognize that this is a push-down crown watch, but still, there are many push-down crown watches that are 100 meters water resistant. And there might be an argument to be made here that perhaps the need to go into and out of atmospheric conditions influenced the decision to not add a lot of water resistance or hermeticity. I still think, given the number of other watch brands that have been used in space as well as in low atmospheric pressures, that it could probably have survived. And if not, give us some sort of gas escape valve, but for air. I'll also say this, it's true that Omega has admitted that if you have a recent production Speedmaster Professional Moonwatch, you can actually take that swimming. Like a watch that's 1 year out of service, 1 year out of the factory, through Robert Jan Brouwer, who definitely knows these things inside out, Omega has acknowledged that you can swim on the surface with this. Still, 50 meters at face value, and I wouldn't take my chances if the watch were even 3 or 4 years old. Another thing. Pricing. Well, it's mostly fair at $6,600 on a strap or $7,000 on a bracelet. The price delta to get a sapphire crystal and a display case back is $1,000, which is a crazy premium for parts that cost at most a few dozen Swiss francs to the manufacturer. And that is despite not employing a dedicated display case back caliber. Remember the old sapphire sandwich where you had caliber 1863 for the display back and 1861 with less finished parts and a few bits of plastic for the solid case back? Well, now both versions, solid and display, get caliber 3861, and there is one standard of finish. I describe it as higher than the 1861 but lower than the 1863. So again, the price premium here of $1,000 does not make sense. I would also say this, it's ubiquitous. This watch is common. It's as common among collectors and even the general public as Toyota Crown Comfort taxis in Hong Kong. And if you've been to Hong Kong, you know that that is iconic of the city the same way yellow cabs are of New York. In a place where Uber has not yet taken over, this is how you get around. And you see as many of those in Hong Kong as you see these at your office or Red Bar. If you don't want to see your watch casually worn by people who otherwise care nothing for watches, then this one isn't for you. Even in outer space, everyone's got one of these. So you just can't get away from it. Okay, now, let's see what you guys are saying. In the box, Patek Philippe, I've always stuck to the Hesselite models. Kate Mancuso joining in. Kate, I loved the photos from the party you guys had. A dog party from what I understand. It was good to see the crew together. Sorry I couldn't make it to see you and Tim. We got Junior Johnson, Norm M, Mark R joining in, and Media. Good evening, Tim, and all from Zurich. Happy to make it tonight. We got Tim Mancuso saying, I love the Seamaster's helium escape valve. I find it to be charming and it adds character to the watch. My 2 cents anyway. Great show topic, Tim. And it continues. Thank you. I'm glad you like the topic. And we're gonna maybe court some controversy here with an even more popular watch, albeit one that fewer people can afford. The Patek Philippe Nautilus 5711 and 5811, and we may even have some 5811 owners in the chat box tonight. What do we love about it? Well, we love the size. At 40 millimeters, it's a great size. It's also thin, at only about 8.6 millimeters thick. It's one of the slimmest 120 meter water resistant watches you're gonna find. And that water resistance itself is a standout for this class, where most watches that are highly water resistant are 100, and the Royal Oak is only 50, so advantage Patek Philippe. I would also say that there's brand integrity here. It's run by a company that is owned by a family and has been since 1932, when every other brand in the business would have cranked up production at the peak of the 5711's popularity. Patek Philippe discontinued it to protect the rest of the brand from being overwhelmed by its most famous product. Also, they don't overproduce, they don't do retro re-editions, they don't pander to anyone, and they march to their own drummer. They don't build too many watches, they don't discount, they don't do gray market closeouts. So if you want to own a watch, and a great one, from a brand that will protect owners now and down the line, any kind of Patek Philippe, but especially a 5711 is a great way to do that. I would also say that when this was new, the MSRP was very fair. Back in 2021, this one-year only green dial model, the Dash 14, it was $34,893, which was about 1/10 of what it was selling for used at the time, and still, it sells for about 9 times what it originally cost. So considering Patek could have just done what a car dealership does and charged with market adjustments, they were being very fair to the people who waited in line to get theirs new. I will also say that counterfeiting isn't really a thing with these or any Patek Philippes due to the challenge of replicating the quality of the details. So those are the things we love about the Nautilus and Patek Philippe more generally. Now the flaws. This is possibly the most hyped watch in the history of hype, and possibly the history of watches. Invites social media burnout if you spend too much time on Instagram or Facebook, and it deluges the watch markets with mainstream population money, which means unlike, say, a Chopard Alpine Eagle, when you're trying to get one of these, you're competing with people who just want the name and the look and don't know anything about watches or care. And that's a big turnoff for a lot of people. I would also say that you're fighting all the watch collectors and all the non-watch collectors when you try to acquire any 5711 or 5811. I would also say that early examples prior to 2019 did not have hacking, which is a big oversight for a watch this expensive from a brand of that stature. And from 2011 and then forward, the bracelets no longer used screws to hold the removable links in place. They went to pin sleeves, which have some advantages but also disadvantages and tend to be something you see on cheaper watches. So I didn't like that change, even if Patek had some legitimate reasons. And none of them received the clasp advantage that you found on later Nautilus models following the discontinuation of the 5711. Later on, a better clasp with micro adjustments would be added. Not available on the 5711. I would also say this, in some cases, a basic steel Dash 014 with the green dial, that retailed for $34,893 back in 2021 and now commands 9 times as much, and that's the middle of the market. You'll find some for a bit less, some for a bit more, but about 9 times retail is what they sell for, and that's just tough to stomach considering what you can get for that kind of money. You get a Girard-Perregaux triaxial tourbillon minute repeater for that kind of money, and probably still have 100 grand left in the bank. And in special cases, it can get much, much worse. Now we're talking about the Dash 18, the 170-piece Tiffany dial. Oh my gosh, those are some big numbers, and yeah. If you bought it new, game on. But if you're going out to buy one today, you're going to pay for the privilege. I don't necessarily think that's great value. So, I would also say this, it's a very recognizable watch, and especially these days, not everyone wants to draw that kind of attention in public. So you've seen the reasons that we love the 5711, but then also the reasons why we might temper our enthusiasm. You make the ultimate choice. I'm just putting the information out there. An empowered collector is going to be ultimately a more satisfied collector. Jumping into the chat box, seeing what you guys are saying right here. We've got Curtis joining in. Glad to see Curtis Arndt, one of our good friends from Southern California. Curtis, I'll be out in Southern California for the Hyde Park Watch Fair at the end of September. So 27th and 28th, I hope to see you guys there. I will be at Hyde Park Jewelers in Newport Beach, California at their Fashion Island location. Patek Philippe saying Tiffany Nautilus was mainly created to pump the Patek company valuation as the business has been for sale. That is a rumor until proved otherwise. I feel like the time to sell probably would have been at the peak of the market in 21 and 22. I would be very surprised if it's just continuously up for sale like, I don't know, someone's vacation house they never occupy, or some overpriced King Power Hublot from the 2000s. Like, I just don't think it would linger for sale and they'd keep that a secret simultaneously. I think it was a bit of a rumor that got up on Hodinkee. I don't think it's an actual thing. What else is going on here? Although, I mean, let's be honest, if it were to be sold, how cool would it be to see another very famous Geneva brand that doesn't do super high-end watches pick it up to have an haute de gamme chapter in its catalog? That would be cool, wouldn't it? That would be a match made in heaven or hell, depending on your perspective. All right, now we've got 234 concurrent. Let's keep that going. Let's talk about a Lange Sohne, and a dream watch for me and many of you. We love the Zeitwerk. I love almost everything about the Zeitwerk. You've got gorgeous dial balance. You've got an animated jumping time display. You've got beautiful movement finishing and innovative engineering. The advanced remontoir d'égalité constant force system, the finish that you expect of a Lange is there. And then this was once the GPHG Aiguille d'Or, or effectively Best Pictures at the Swiss Oscars of watchmaking. And remember, this is a German watch. It was that good. And if you're going to buy a Lange, they say get one of the big three. So a Lange 1, a Dotograph, and a Zeitwerk. But really, this is the only one of those three I'd actually want to own. What do we love? Well, there's so much that it's difficult to pick out the flaws, but almost everyone starts with the same, basically the same complaint, which is the size and the weight and the thickness. So far too large for many wrists. It's 42 millimeters, but it's a big 42. It's also thick and heavy, leading to the gripe that it wears like a hockey puck on the wrist. And it's almost too large for me at about 50 millimeters lug to lug. I would do it. I would try. I would put up with the shortcomings aesthetically because I love it so much. But if your wrist were even a little bit smaller than my 16 centimeter circumference wrist, you would be looking at a different Lange. Also, historically, prior to the Zeitwerk date and the 2022 redesign of the model, it had a very short power reserve of 36 hours. It was a purposeful power reserve and a pleasure to wind, but still 36 hours. I would also say most versions actually see quite a bit of cyclical drop. It's a 1-minute remontoir, which differs from, say, the 8-second Grunefeld version and the 1-second F. Pigeon version. And there is actually some kind of sinusoidal ebb and flow to that balance amplitude over that minute. And so that does compromise the timekeeping a little bit despite the remontoir. I'll also mention that adjusting time was a marathon task before the Zeitwerk date and the 2022 redesign. Because if you were 12 hours removed, or let's say 6 hours removed from whatever you wanted, you would have quite a bit of wheeling and turning to adjust manually through all those jumps of the minutes, tens of minutes, and hours. And some people can't make their peace with the minute disc pre-jump, which is something that was resolved years ago, but older models still have that little bit of pre-adjustment of the minute disc before the jump. And although it doesn't bother me at all, some people get really heated and hot under the collar about this. So I'm just putting it out there. If this is something that would bother you, maybe look at a newer Zeitwerk. Okay, in the box. Miroslav, is anything that one can dislike in the Zeitwerk? Other than the size, I'm really struggling. Patek Philippe, come on Tim, the biggest complaint is that the dial looks like a fat guy in a t-shirt, and I'm a fat guy wearing a t-shirt right now. That said, a fat guy in a suit can look quite good, and I always saw the Zeitwerk as a tuxedo. All right, what else is going on in here? We have a question from Isa. Tim, is your watch too big? I don't think so. I mean, you can see that the watch is not broader than my wrist. It doesn't overhang the edges, and it's actually not close on either side. So I think this wears pretty decent. It's blocky, it's monolithic, but I don't think it's too big. It's the R1, Mr. Roboto. There's an R2 that's even bigger. Jim Millicent, I've worn a deep sea as a daily, so size is fine for me. Guys, we're 255 viewers. Let's keep that going. Stay with me so we can hit 300. Viewer wrist shots number 2. Jeff S. is actually back with his nearly unheard of rainbow-iced Zenith Day 521 in rose gold. Bet you didn't know that exists. We've got Fayaz R of the UK and his son getting started at 5 months with my Omega Speedmaster review. That's right, start him young. And we've got Tex D, who watches American college football with one of my dream watches, the original MIH watch, which is both an annual calendar and a chronograph. We've got Ivan Jan C, going cave diving, and he's matching his lume to the ambient light of the cave in astounding fashion. We've got Kevin S., who picks up his brand new Rolex Submariner two-tone in Los Angeles. Wear it in good health. Okay, fatal flaws in top watches. We started with the Speedmaster. Now we're talking about what I consider to be the Seamaster Professional, which is the Diver 300 meter. What we love, $5,900 to get this watch on a bracelet versus $10,250 for a Submariner. Both for value and for some of the functions and features, that gets my vote. Lots of cool tech, from a helium escape valve to a ceramic dial to a coaxial amagnetic Master Chronometer certified automatic movement. You've got a superb clasp with trigger release, thick gauge steel components, a fold-out dive extension, and a push-button slider. That's a lot for under $6,000. You've also got a element of design continuity, as this has been the look of the watch now for over 3 decades. It's really the first Seamaster that had that kind of continuity, largely because it became such a classic in the Pierce Brosnan era of James Bond, and people didn't want to let go. So the previous process of completely redesigning the Seamaster every 5 to 10 years actually went away, and this one has gone the distance. So there's some evergreen attraction right there. And now the flaws. So the first one is that this is in its 7th model year in its current iteration. Just because they don't redesign it completely doesn't mean they don't refine it. It gets refined every couple of years, and the last big revision was 2018, which means we are in the 7th model year of this version, and I suspect fairly soon there will be a new one. So if you are buying, you might want to buy pre-owned to get a discount off of list, or bargain very shrewdly at the dealer counter. Again, there should be a new one in 24 to 36 months, maybe even 12 to 24 months. I'm also going to say the bezel is hard to turn even when it's dry. Although it has a pleasing bezel action, it is very difficult to turn. It's hard to get purchase on that sort of scalloped, shallow knurling. And at almost 14 millimeters, it's just too thick when a Rolex Submariner is 12.8 millimeters, and you feel and you see the difference. Plus, now on the movement front, it has a lot of advanced features, but 55 hours of power reserve is clearly too little in 2024, when even Mito Ocean Stars have 80 hours of power reserve for under $1,000. And those are made in the Swatch Group. Also, and maybe a bit controversially, 22 years after Pierce Brosnan turned in his license to kill, some of the star power of this model may have faded. We'll find out whether and to what extent this model is seen on the wrist of the next James Bond. All right, what are you guys saying in the box? Andrew Schild, I wish Omega wouldn't put AR coatings on the outside when it comes to their tool watches. I second that. Mr. Note 8, the Submariner is superior to the 300 meter in literally every way, unless you like being I'm too cool for Rolex. Well, let's see. Does it have a helium escape valve? No, the Sub doesn't. Does the Sub have 2 different adjustment mechanisms in the clasp? No, it doesn't. Does the Sub have a display caseback? No, it doesn't. Does the Sub have an amagnetic movement? No, it doesn't. It's just as good a timekeeper and just as deep a diver, but the Omega does have advantages, one of which is that it costs thousands and thousands of dollars less. All right, back to the beat. IWC Big Pilot's watch. What we love, impressive wrist presence, impressive 7-day power reserve, giant scale manufacture movement with lots of features including overcoil hairspring, free sprung balance, ceramic Peloton pull-based winding system, 2 mainspring barrels, and a size large enough to fill a giant case properly like a hand in glove. A true do-it-all sports watch with swimmable water resistance, anti-magnetic qualities, and security against displacement of crystal and seals in an explosively decompressing aircraft cabin. It's got a legible dial day or night with plenty of lume. It's an IWC icon, so if you're going to buy just one IWC, you're going to get yourself a Portugueser, a Mark, or one of these. Also, one of the most recognizable watch models available today, holding its own with things that cost multiples of its price of $13,200 in steel. Also, that's a pretty reasonable price for what you're getting, and it's handsome overall. There's almost too many variants to list, which means everyone should find a Big Pilot's watch in size and function and complication, case metal and dial color that they like. So, flaws. First, It's not that it's 46.2 millimeters in its standard size, it's that at 56.5 millimeters lug to lug, very few people can actually wear this. Pre-52000 series movements, that's the series before they went to a 4 Hz beat rate and 2 barrels, they have serious running rate issues, going too fast when fully wound and gaining time, and then losing a lot once they get down to 3 to 1 day left of power reserve. And that really wasn't fixed until the 52000 series. So until really the 5010, that wasn't fixed. What else is going on? Well, a rare case where I'm disappointed by the presence of a solid caseback. Normally, I think that with mechanically finished movements, I'd rather have a nice display caseback with a, well, not display, but illustrated caseback with a cool design or an engraving than a sapphire over a humdrum design. But I actually think this movement is cool enough that even with mostly mechanical finishing, I would like to be able to see it. Super affordable alternative BR style watches are available, including by one of the original manufacturers from the 1940s, Laco. And for $13.50, this one can be yours. And a lot of folks are not going to be able to tell the difference between that and your $13,000 Big Pilot's watch. If that's important to you, or if value is important to you, you may consider the alternative. Finally, and there's no getting around this, it's a problem Panerai also has. There is a troubling history to this model, as it was originally designed for the World War II Luftwaffe, and I think we all remember what the World War II Luftwaffe was about. We forgive, but we don't forget, and that's always made this model a little bit problematic for me. So, that's that. You may feel otherwise, and I would love to own the Zeg and Cerlati version. I just can't afford it. So, viewer wrist shot number 3. Sebastian S. is at Bavaria, Germany's Tegernsee with his JLC Polaris perpetual calendar, a dive watch that's also a perpetual calendar. Mohammadi of Kenya and his IWC get shockingly close to lions in Samburu National Wildlife Park. Abdul R. and his Casio DWB 5600 enjoy the late summer shore on Egypt's northern Mediterranean coast. Phil C. of New Jersey goes for a ride in his Audi SQ5 with the Rolex Yachtmaster Oyster Flex. Very, very cool on Labor Day weekend. We've got Adam G, who captures his rare and magnificent Blancpain Villeret inverse in his BMW M440i. I am so thrilled to see someone who values, appreciates, and actually lays down his own money to own a Blancpain dress watch. I think they're the best kept secret in dress watches today. Send your wrist shots to Monday Mailbag at the1916company.com to see your passion in this fashion. All right, Tudor Black Bay. You might have seen this coming because we can't talk about the Big Brother brand, but Tudor's cool. I appreciate that, Tudor. So we love the price, we love the value, we love the designs that have longevity and look as good today as when the first Heritage Black Bay came out in 2012. It has meaningful mechanical features like a long power reserve, a silicone hairspring, a chronometer certification, and more than enough water resistance to actually use as a dive watch. Plus, there's the T-Fit clasp, which adds a lot of value for adjustment and for diving. We also have the Black Bay 58. We have different case metals. We have the Black Bay 54. We have a GMT. We have the P01. We've got a chronograph, and we've got straps and bracelets to make everyone happy. So it can be whatever you want as long as you don't want it to be a Submariner. Flaws. A few. First, there's the Speedmaster scenario. Tons of watches, tons of production, long-term production. It's not going to be unique or exclusive. That's okay. If your watch is the only one that matters to you, ubiquity is not a problem. I would also say it's a lot thicker than a Rolex sub, unless we're talking about the caliber 5400 versions like the 54 and the 58. So typically, an in-house Black Bay is going to be 14.8 millimeters thick. A sub is 12.8, so advantage Rolex on that count. Display casebacks too. Here, this is where I would really rather not see the movement. Yes, it's great that you can acknowledge that it's mechanical, but I would rather see, especially on the solid gold model, a disc of solid gold, which is worth a hell of a lot more than the sapphire, and then maybe a cool engraving in it, like a piece of old Whaler's scrimshaw. That would be really neat and add a lot of value to one of the most expensive Tudor watches you can buy. You may or may not care that the Canisi automatic caliber has gone from a Tudor manufacturer exclusive to basically everywhere, as it's now in Breitling, Norqain, Bell & Ross, Chanel, and Tag Heuer, plus more being added all the time. Finally, fake rivet bracelets, something Tudor does well, but admittedly does. It's almost like the Fotina of the bracelet world, and that's always going to be a controversial concept. So, I still love the Black Bay. I really like the 58. I love the Black Bay 58 sterling silver. So Tudor, please, no, I come to this criticism from a place of love and admiration. All right, Vacheron Constantin Overseas Self-Winding, a watch that I have called the best value in its class and the best product in its class, even with the proliferation of competitors and chic independents. So, what we love, lots of features. Quick release bracelet, bracelets with every single link removable, bracelets with micro adjustments. The watch comes with an extra clasp and a rubber strap and a leather strap. It has a display caseback. It's anti-magnetic. It's hugely water resistant for its class. It's got a 60-hour power reserve, which is solidly more than the Nautilus. And this is a watch that offers the same degree of high mech finish, Geneva hallmark, and exterior case detailing that you would get on something costing much more money. At $25,000, it's still very reasonably priced. It holds its value quite well. It's not a big gainer, but it's also not a loser. And with an 8-year warranty, you can basically wipe the sweat off your brow. You are protected long term. So, what are the flaws? Well, they include thickness compared to others in its class. Massive compared to a Royal Oak Jumbo at about 11.5 millimeters thick. This is going to be a solid 2 millimeters more than a lot of the watches it calls competitors, like the Chopek Antarctique, Patek 5811 or 5711, and even the Royal Oak 15510 is quite a bit thinner. Also, no hacking, despite the 2016 redesign with modern movements, and I think this day and age you have to have that. Caliber 5100, it is handsomely finished to Geneva Seal standards, but it's not architecturally appealing, which is to say it's big and well decorated, but the shape, proportion, and arrangement of the bridges, it is not poetic. The rotor is the best looking part of the movement. It's relatively plain if you take the rotor off. And to be fair to Vacheron, Patek, AP, and even Lange, all of them do a good job of finishing movements that are pretty boring architecturally. That's the Lange L155 in the Odysseus, and while the materials are rich and the decoration is good, it's a pretty boring architecture with a giant mono bridge covering most of the works. So it's not as though Vacheron is unique in this regard, but I will say, check out Chopek's SXH5. This was developed in conjunction with Emmanuel Boucher, who also designed the Harry Winston Opus 12. This is how you do technical specification, superb decoration, and awesome architecture on a modern sports watch caliber. Finally, the Overseas exhibits some jarring transitional proportions where the bracelet joins the case. And you can see it's a little bit awkward there. It gets pencil-necked. Still, I consider the Vacheron to be the most competitive offering in this class for total features, value, and quality. Okay, Girard-Perregaux Laureato. We love the original 1970s integrated bracelet watch. The original Laureato came out in 1975. That's before the Ingenieur SL. That's before the Nautilus. That's before the Vacheron 222. This was an original. This is not a Johnny-come-lately. It's not a modern cash-in. It has the beautiful Girard-Perregaux manufacture caliber 1800, which is nicely sized, has a beautiful architecture if you can see the barrel bridge, and it's handsomely decorated with a longish power reserve for 54 hours. We've got respectable 100-meter water resistance, handsome overall design. It's one of the few integrated bracelet sports watches that wears true to its rated size of 42 millimeters or even a little bit smaller. Now, flaws. Well, one is resale. This sells for $14,300 new. It sells used for less than $9,000. Yep, that's even the blue and the green dials with full box and papers and warranty remaining. Plus, here's something you probably haven't thought about: brand anxiety. Girard-Perregaux recently accessed a Swiss government funding facility that provides bridge payroll, almost like the old American Paycheck Protection Program from the COVID era. Well, this Swiss program provides bridge payroll during a time of corporate stress to allow them to keep skilled labor on board and avoid layoffs. The objective, of course, is to retain people who are difficult to rehire and in short supply generally. It's the right move, but collectors are justifiably concerned about where this leads for the brand that has only been independent from the Kering luxury group for about 1 year. So it's not a great sign that they're already drawing on special resources to keep staff on. Now I will say this is not unique to them. Many in the Jura Valley region have availed of this fund. Many more will. We're in a transition period post-COVID, but before whatever comes later in the watch industry. So ... to be continued, but it's a legitimate concern if you're buying one of these, especially if you're buying one of these new today. I'm also going to say this, case and bracelet finish are handsome, but not as intricate as the leaders in this category, or for that matter, even Chopard's $14,800 Alpine Eagle. So that would be closer in terms of finishing quality and detail to something like the Vacheron, the Nautilus, or the Royal Oak, whereas the Girard-Perregaux feels more like something you'd compare to an IWC Ingenieur in terms of case, bracelet, and clasp finish. Okay, viewer wrist shots number 4. Kevin C. of Malaysia prepares for his residency exam with the IWC Pilot's Watch Chronograph Woodland. Good luck, Kevin. Kyle A. picks up his new Rolex GMT Master 2 two-tone. Wear it in good health. Long may you both prosper. Kevin R. and his Seiko explore a spooky abandoned hotel in Portugal. Stay safe there. And then we have Vincent V and his Seiko King Seiko giving scale for the giant hibiscus flower. We have Stephen E, who takes us home with his self-explanatory Alexander Shorokov Yellow-matic. It is both automatic and yellow. Truth in advertising. And how about that strap? Guys, send your wrist shots to mondaymailbag@the1916company.com. Thanks to you, thanks to my crew, thanks to everyone who joined in and made time, especially if you stayed up late or got out early, and Garrett, the man behind the magic, making it all happen. Time out, Tim out, and thanks for logging on.